Well, I hope you're enjoying your World Book Day digital extravaganza. In this video, it's Christmas time. That's weird, isn't it? This we made this 3 months ago, and I've got here on Zoom. I've got Jack Mackay, who is a friend of mine and is a young writer. Jack, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing wonderfully, thank you. Very excited for Christmas, which will have been and gone by the time this goes out, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So happy Christmas and World Book Day at the same time.
Exactly.
Yes, excellent. So can I ask you some personal questions?
Go for it.
How old are you, Jack?
I am 20 years of age.
20 years of age, okay,
Mhm.
which is quite old. And your university at the moment?
I'm in my third year, so my last year of university now.
Okay, good stuff. And you're a writer as well.
I am. I am. I've been writing for a very long time, and then this is the kind of first time it's things have taken off really.
Ooh, that sounds very exciting. So in what way have they taken off?
Well, in June, I was able to get an agent for the latest book that I've written, which is a children's horror story, for the kind of ages 9 to 12, or basically anybody who wants to be scared. And it got picked up in June, by a really wonderful agency in London, and then since then it's been a kind of wild few months, and I've had a lot of Zoom meetings with people, and now we're set to be published in October next year, in the UK and the US and some other very exciting places. Um,
Fantastic. Well, congratulations. So what's the book called? And tell us all about it.
well, the book is called Gloam, previously called The House on Gloam Island, but we shortened it because we thought that it was a bit punchier. It's a short story, well, a kind of, I say short story. It's a short-ish novel about four children who've kind of suffered a loss in the family, and their stepfather, who's a very nice stepfather. He's not like a lot of stepfathers in children's stories that are very horrible. This is a lovely man who's trying his. He's not very good at his job, but he's trying his best. And he takes them to a back to their old grandparents' house, their late grandparents' house. And because he's so busy and can't look after them while he's working out on the mainland, he hires a babysitter to look after them in the meantime. And she's this very friendly, very beautiful lady with golden eyes, and her name is Esme. And most of the children get on with her, apart from the main character Gwen, who thinks that there is something very wrong and very sinister about this Esme. And things start getting weird because a black mold starts spreading throughout the house, and the tree in the garden starts talking to her, and all of the children start to see figures from their childhood nightmares coming to life in the house, and Gwen reckons it's all Esme's fault. So that's the basic premise. And it's on its own. It's a little standalone thing. There's no plans for a sequel. I mean, one of the UK publishers I was talking to wanted to have a sequel, and I said I don't think I can do that. It's very much its own little thing. But it just seems. I think kids want to be scared, and my siblings are 11 and 12, and they really love kind of spooky stuff. They love that kind of Doctor Who brand of scary, where it's just scary enough. It's just
Yes,
enough to kind of spook you and hide behind the sofa, but it's still a lot of fun, and there's plenty of
yes.
comedy and whatever.
And you know that there's going to be a happy ending at the end, usually.
Hopefully so.
Yeah, absolutely. So the word gloam, so that's Gloam.
That's the one.
Um, so that's the name of the island. I've read the first couple of chapters, by the way. You sent me the text, and then I forgot to read the rest of it. I'm very bad. And it was great. I love the idea that this island has a causeway to get to. I do like a causeway because with a causeway you can drive across it
Mm,
sometimes, but then when the tide
yes.
comes in, you're stuck. And I've been stuck on the other side of causeways quite a few times from not reading the signs properly. That comes from gloaming, as in the Scots for, is that like dusk? It's like getting dark, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a beautiful word that is kind of, it's quite an old word, and it's often associated with fairies or the kind of spooky kind of Gaelic folklore.
Mm.
Um, and the island is called Gloaming, but the or it's called Gloam Island rather, and the village is called Gloaming.
You've been writing for quite a long time, you said, even though you're only still young. So most of the people watching this will be 10 or 11, years 5 and 6. So what was your writing like? Were you writing when you were that age? What was it like for you then?
Well, I mean, I've been writing since I was very. I mean, the first book, the first like kind of novel I wrote, I was just about 11, and that was kind of a very short story. And I think when you're young, there's a bit of, you feel that kind of pressure to start being very good straight away, and if you're not very good at it, you feel like you've failed or that you're rubbish and there's no point doing it. But when I've been writing since I was 4, and the first things I used to write were these tiny little short stories that were about maybe 6 pages long, that were essentially copies of the Beast Quest books,
Mm.
which are great and have been around for a long time. And I used to love them when I was a kid. And anyone who hasn't read them, they're basically like there's maybe 6 books in a series, and they're all quite small, but they've all got a different monster on the front, and they're all about this pair of heroes who slay monsters all across the land, or befriend the monsters. It depends on the story. And I used to write my own versions of those that weren't very good. And having gone back and looked at them, I think they're very funny, because some of the names of the monsters are actually I did not know this when I was 5 or 6, but actually translate to quite rude words when you're an adult, which my mother always found very funny, and I could never understand why she was laughing at the names of my monsters. But one thing I think that you're allowed to do when you're young, especially when you're starting out as a writer at any age, is to kind of magpie things from things that you know, because the best way to start is to kind of copy people who've done it really well. So I started copying. I did not copy. I didn't use the same words, but I used the same world to kind of start writing. And then my first novel was called Edwin's World, and it was a kind of little strange quest thing, and I didn't plan it out, and I just kind of wrote it chapter by chapter because I was having fun. And there were talking mannequins in it, and there was a big dragon that breathed purple lightning, I think. And it was very much an accumulation of different things that I'd found in other books, and I thought that works really cool. I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna make it my own, and then I'd throw in some of my own completely bananas stuff.
Mhm.
And it became this hodgepodge Frankenstein thing of lots of other things. And
Mm.
my mother loves that book very much. I don't, but that's because all I can see is myself when I was 11, but I think that there is that's a lovely thing. Um,
Yes, I really like what you're saying about copying there, or being inspired by, because I think obviously at school, I don't know what it's like at school now, to be honest. Maybe people that watching can tell us. But when I was at school, you weren't allowed to copy. That's like rule number one: no copying, wasn't it? You have to do your own stuff in your own head, make
mm,
make your own stuff up. But if it's about writing, then yeah, reading lots of stuff and then copying, it's a great way. It's the same with illustrating, isn't it? My friend Mark Waiton, who illustrated my Boy Face books, when people ask his advice, he always says, copy, find pictures in books and copy them. And when we're
mm.
drawing, that's what we do, isn't it? We don't say, well, I must draw something that nobody else has ever drawn before. No, we learn to draw a cat and we learn to draw a house and whatever. So maybe with writing, we should be, yeah, learn to write a quest story, learn to write a funny story, and use other books as inspiration. I think that's really good advice. Yeah, I
Well,
like it.
it's the best way to figure out what works, and if something works for you in a story, um, writing it into your own work, it's different to copying it word for word, because you're not copying the material, you're copying the kind of elements of that material. And so
Mm,
when you put it into your own piece of work and tie it all together and see what happens, it's like playing with toys and seeing, and you can, if it works for you and you can feel that it works for you, writing it out yourself is a very good way of trying to figure out why it works, and then you can use that, to make your own stuff, especially when you're a young writer, and you're just starting out, and you don't have to worry about people reading your stuff yet if you don't want to. I mean, you can
mm.
get to at any age and write for yourself and write, because there's plenty of really accomplished writers who don't start until they're, fully adults with, full paying jobs. And you have to start somewhere. And I think the best place to start is by kind of, in your own space. You don't need to show it to anybody just yet if you don't want to, but have a play around with things that work for you.
Yes, yes, and it should be playful, shouldn't it? I think. I mean, obviously at school, they all have to do important things like spelling and grammar and all the rest. That's all very important. But I
Mm,
think with your own creative stuff, I think it's important to have a notebook that you don't show anybody. That's just where you do your writing. And if you want to share it with other people, then do so, or you don't have to. It's entirely up to you. I
yeah,
think that's very important. Do you? I think that's a tip, really, isn't it? What I've done there is
this is
sort of a
it.
tip. Yeah, have a notebook that nobody else reads, a secret writing book. Can you think of any other tips that would be good for people that want to be writers?
Well, that's a great point. I mean, I've always, when I was younger, I always was a bit scared of writing advice. And there was a point where I would go, on through read down big rabbit holes on the internet looking for writing advice. And then as I got older, the more I kind of stopped, because I wanted to. People talk about rules a lot when it comes to writing, what the rules are and how things work, and you have to do it this way to make it good. Um, and I think the best advice I've ever got has been from people who have done it themselves and have spoken to me personally, more so than kind of articles you find online, because they tend to be easy and they tend to have quite easy advice and quite obvious advice. And half the
Mm.
time that advice is flawed, if not wrong. I think the rules are important. Like, it's funny, like you just said, James, actually, learning things like spelling and grammar and all of that stuff. It might not be everyone's favorite thing to do, but it's great and it's very, very important. Um, the best the best thing that one of the best realizations I ever had over the course of the last few years was that, um, oh, I know the rules because I've done school and I've done all of my kind of formal technical training in school. And my granddad's a big fan of he's a poet and he loves grammar and he's very, very good at it. And so he's always been the first person to see my books and to go through with a comb and say, oh, that need, that's that, you need a colon there. This is the difference between a semicolon and a colon, and that's why it's important. And this is how you use this word properly. And so I learned through experience. And once I'd had all of that in my mind, not only does it become more natural, but you start realizing that the rules, you can actually bend them quite a lot. And that's how some really good stuff starts happening. And people say, oh, you need this to happen in your book, and you need this to happen in your book, and this is the way to write a mystery story. And then you write the mystery story with those rules in mind, and you realize that if you break a few of the rules, it's actually a better mystery story. So rules are good,
Yes.
then you can start twisting them and bending them and playing with them when you're more comfortable with those rules in your brain.
I like that. So follow the rules for the moment, and then once you've learned them, then you can bend them. I like
Yeah,
that. Unless, of course, you're a genius, in which case, ignore everything we're saying and carry on.
yeah. Do your own thing. Well, I'm not a genius, so if you're a genius, do your own thing because there's nothing I can
Absolutely.
teach you.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So Jack, it's lovely to talk to you on World Book Day, stroke Christmas. So the book comes out in October, just October 2024, and
Mm,
it's called Gloam,
Gloam.
Gloam, by Jack Mackay, Mackay. I'm guessing,
That's the
yes.
one.
Lovely. I will put links to it on my website when it comes out.
Thank you.
And now I know it's going to be an actual thing. I'd better read it, hadn't I? Because
That's all right. You've got plenty of time.
well, I feel very privileged that I'm able to read your book before the rest of the world does. And I'm sure everybody who's watching this at school today, also very privileged to meet you, learn about you before you're famous. Give it a year, you'll be all over Waterstones. It would be great.
Who
Wonderful.
knows? We'll see what happens.
Lovely. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope to see you again soon.
Oh,
Bye.
well, thanks for having me. Have a great World Book Day.
Bye. That's good. Lovely.
Have
That'll
a
do,
team.
I think.
Fantastic.